Tonight, you will practice slow English through a rainy train story from Havenport. A man catches the last train home after a long night at work. On the train, he notices an elderly woman who returns to the same platform every night. She is not lost. She is not waiting for a train. She is coming back to a place that still means something to her. I will speak slowly and clearly, so you can relax, listen, and improve your English naturally. Welcome to Nightwave English. Good evening, listeners. You are listening to a late-night English broadcast from Lumen District in the quiet coastal city of Havenport. Outside the studio window, rain is falling gently on the rooftops and the streets below. The city lights are soft tonight. The traffic is slow. The apartment windows glow like small lanterns in the dark. And somewhere in the city, a train is leaving the station for the last time before morning. Tonight, you do not need to understand every word. Just follow the story. Listen to the rhythm of the sentences. Notice the words you know. Let the new words become familiar little by little. If this broadcast helps you relax or practice your English, you can return to Havenport anytime. There will always be another quiet story waiting after midnight. Tonight's story is called The Last Train Home. But first, let us begin with the weather and transit report in Havenport. This is the Nightwave weather and transit report for Havenport. Tonight, light rain continues across the city. The temperature is around 10 degrees Celsius. The wind is calm in Lumen District, but stronger near the harbor and the open train platforms. In Old Market, the streets are wet and almost empty. Most shops are closed. A few restaurant signs are still glowing. A few delivery bikes move through the narrow streets, their wheels shining with rain. Near Central Station, the platforms are damp, the air is cool, and the last trains are preparing to leave. A platform is the place where passengers wait for a train. You stand on the platform before the train arrives. You step from the platform into the train. And late at night, an empty platform can feel like a quiet room inside the city. Tonight, some trains are slightly delayed because of the rain. Delayed means late. A delayed train arrives later than expected. A delayed bus arrives later than expected. A delayed message arrives after you needed it. But the Harbor Line train is still running. The final Harbor Line train will leave Central Station at 12:18 a.m. After that, there will be no trains until early morning. So, if you need to travel tonight, take your time, but not too much time. Because sometimes, in a city like Havenport, there is a big difference between catching the train and missing the train. That is our main expression tonight. To catch the train. To catch the train means to arrive in time and get on the train before it leaves. If you arrive too late, you miss the train. If you arrive just in time, you catch the train. In tonight's story, a man named Evan catches the last train home. And because he catches that train, his night changes in a way he does not expect. The rain continues over Havenport. The platforms are shining. The station clocks are moving toward midnight. And our story begins near a small cinema in Old Market, just after the final movie of the night. Evan worked at a small independent cinema in Old Market. The cinema was called the Marlowe Screen. It was not large. It had only 2 rooms, one small ticket counter, a narrow hallway, and an old red carpet that had seen too many rainy shoes. But Evan liked the place. He liked the posters on the walls. He liked the smell of popcorn after the last audience had gone. He liked the heavy curtains, the warm lights, and the quiet moment after a movie ended, when everyone walked out slowly, still half inside the story they had just watched. That night, the final movie ended at 11:46 p.m. It was an old film about a man traveling across the country by train. The audience was small, only 9 people, 2 students, a couple in long coats, a man who came every Thursday and always sat in the same seat, and a woman who cried quietly during the final scene. After the credits ended, Evan walked through the room with a small flashlight. He checked the seats. He picked up 2 empty cups, a scarf, and a ticket someone had dropped on the floor. Then he turned off the projector. The room became dark. Only the exit sign remained, glowing green above the door. A cinema after midnight can feel strange, not scary, just strange. It is a place built for people, but suddenly there are no people. The chairs face the empty screen. The screen reflects nothing. The hallway is silent, and the stories that filled the room only minutes ago are gone. Evan locked the side door, turned off the lobby lights, and checked the time. 12:03 a.m. The last Harbor Line train left at 12:18. Central Station was 12 minutes away if he walked fast. Maybe 10 minutes if he ran. He put on his coat, pulled the hood over his head, and stepped into the rain. Old Market was quiet. The street lamps reflected on the wet stones. A closed bakery smelled faintly of sugar and warm bread. A bicycle leaned against a wall beside a plant shop. Above the shops, apartment windows glowed softly. Evan started walking quickly, then faster, then almost running. His shoes splashed through small puddles. His breath became visible in the cold air. He passed a cafe that had just closed, a bus stop with no one waiting, and a narrow alley where water dripped from a metal fire escape. The station entrance appeared at the end of the street like a warm square of light. 12:14 a.m. 4 minutes. Inside Central Station, the night felt different. The rain became a distant sound behind glass doors. The floor was bright and clean. The announcements echoed softly through the hall. Only a few people were still there. A man with a suitcase, a student with a backpack, a cleaner pushing a quiet machine across the floor, and Evan walking quickly toward platform 4. He reached the stairs as the announcement began. The final Harbor Line train is now arriving on platform 4. Evan took the steps 2 at a time. At the top, the train was already waiting. Silver doors, yellow light inside, rain on the windows. The platform was almost empty. He stepped into the nearest carriage just before the warning sound began. The doors closed behind him. He had caught the train. There are some moments that seem small when they happen. Catching a train, finding a seat, staying dry. But later, when you look back, you realize the moment was a door. If you had arrived 1 minute later, everything would have been different. Evan did not know that yet. For now, he was just tired. He walked through the carriage and sat beside the window. The train began to move, slowly at first, then faster, leaving Central Station behind. The city slid past the window in long lines of light and rain. The carriage was warm and almost silent. A carriage is one section of a train where passengers sit. In American English, people often say train car. In British English, carriage is common. Tonight, Evan sat in the last carriage of the last train home. There were only 4 other passengers. The man with the suitcase was asleep near the doors. The student with the backpack was reading something on his phone. A woman in a dark coat sat at the far end, her hands folded in her lap. And near the middle of the carriage sat an elderly woman in a gray scarf. She was looking out of the window, not at her phone, not at a book, just out of the window. Her face was calm. Her posture was straight. A small brown handbag rested on her knees. Evan noticed her because she looked like someone who was not in a hurry. Everyone else on the last train looked tired, cold, or ready to go home. But she looked as if she had all the time in the world. The train passed through the first station without stopping, then the second. At each station, the doors opened. The rain sounded louder for a few seconds, and then the doors closed again. No one got on. No one got off. The last train continued through Havenport, past Old Market, past the quiet warehouses, past a row of apartment buildings where plants hung over dark balconies, past the black water of the harbor, where lights trembled in the rain. Evan leaned his head against the window. The glass was cold. He could see his own reflection in it, his tired eyes, his wet hair, the collar of his coat. Behind his reflection, the city moved like a dream. At Harbor Line East, the woman in the dark coat got off. At North Pier, the student left, pulling his hood over his head before stepping into the rain. At West Quay, the man with the suitcase woke suddenly, looked around in panic, and hurried through the doors just in time. Then only 2 passengers remained, Evan and the elderly woman in the gray scarf. The train moved deeper into the quiet part of the line. Here, the stations were smaller, less bright, more open to the wind and rain. Evan knew them well. Harbor Line Garden, South Lock, Mere Road, and finally, Alder Station, where he usually got off. But before Alder Station, there was one stop he always forgot. Marlow Bridge. It was a small station between the old canal and a row of closed factories. Almost no one used it at night. Sometimes the train stopped there and no doors opened. Sometimes one person got off and disappeared under the yellow lamps. Evan had never paid much attention to it. But that night, as the train slowed near Marlow Bridge, the elderly woman stood up. She moved slowly, but carefully. She took her handbag. She adjusted her scarf. She walked to the doors. The train stopped. The doors opened. Rain blew into the carriage. The platform outside was empty. Long, wet, quiet. The woman stepped off the train. Evan watched her through the window. She did not walk toward the exit. She did not check a timetable. She simply stood under the platform roof and looked at the opposite track. The doors closed. The train began moving again. For a few seconds, Evan could still see her. A small figure in a gray scarf, standing alone on the wet platform. Then the station disappeared behind the rain. The next night, Evan worked late again. Another film, another small audience, another empty cinema after midnight. And again, he ran through Old Market to catch the last train home. This time, he arrived with 6 minutes to spare. He bought a bottle of water from a vending machine and walked calmly to platform 4. When the train arrived, he entered the same carriage as before. The elderly woman was already there. Gray scarf, brown handbag, straight posture, looking out of the window. Evan felt a small surprise. Not a dramatic surprise, just a quiet feeling you get when yesterday repeats itself. He sat a few seats away. The train left Central Station. Rain moved across the windows. The same stations passed in the same order. Old Market, North Pier, West Quay, South Lock, and then Marlow Bridge. The woman stood up. She walked to the doors. She stepped onto the platform. And again, she did not leave. She stood under the roof and looked across the tracks. Evan watched until the station disappeared. This time, he did not forget. By the fourth night, Evan had started to expect her. That is how routines begin. A thing happens once, and it is only a moment. It happens twice, and you notice it. It happens 3 times, and your mind begins to wait for it. A routine is something repeated. It can be simple. A cup of tea before bed, a walk in the rain, a radio broadcast at night, a woman getting off the last train at Marlow Bridge. Evan did not know why she did it. He did not want to be rude. He did not want to stare. But curiosity is a quiet thing. It sits beside you and asks small questions. Who is she? Why does she go there? Why does she stand on the platform instead of leaving? And why does she always look at the opposite track? On Friday night, the rain was heavier. The cinema had been busy. Evan was tired. He almost missed the train again. When he entered the carriage, he was breathing fast, and his coat was wet. The elderly woman was there. She looked up briefly, noticed him, and smiled. Only a small smile, but it made the carriage feel warmer. Evan sat across the aisle. For most of the journey, neither of them spoke. That was better. Some stories do not need to begin with conversation. They begin with shared silence. Shared silence means 2 people are quiet together. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just quiet in the same space. The train moved through Havenport, station by station. At North Pier, a group of young people got on, laughing softly after a concert. At West Quay, they got off again, leaving behind the smell of rain and perfume. At South Lock, the carriage became quiet once more. Marlow Bridge was next. The woman stood up, as always. But this time, before the train stopped, she turned slightly toward Evan. Her voice was soft. She told him that Marlow Bridge looked beautiful in the rain. That was all. Not a long conversation. Not an explanation. Just one small sentence. Evan looked through the window as the station appeared. For the first time, he really looked. Marlow Bridge was not impressive. It was old, small, almost forgotten. But in the rain, under the yellow platform lights, it did have a quiet beauty. The wet roof shone softly. The empty benches reflected the light. Beyond the tracks, an old pedestrian bridge crossed over the station, dark against the cloudy sky. The doors opened. The woman stepped out. As before, she stood under the roof and looked across the tracks. This time, Evan understood at least one thing. She was not lost. She knew exactly where she was. If this broadcast is keeping you company tonight, you can subscribe to Nightwave English and return for the next story from Havenport. There will be more quiet places, more rainy streets, and more slow English listening after midnight. On Saturday, Evan did not work. He planned to stay home. He planned to cook something simple, watch a movie, and sleep early. But at 11:30 p.m., he found himself thinking about Marlow Bridge. He tried to ignore the thought. He made tea. He opened a book. He read the same paragraph 3 times. Then he closed the book. Curiosity had won. At 11:52, he left his apartment with an umbrella. He walked to Alder Station and took the train in the opposite direction. Not the last train home this time. The last train toward Central Station. The carriage was nearly empty. The city outside was dark and wet. Evan watched the stations pass. Muir Road, South Lock, then Marlow Bridge. He stepped off. For the first time, he stood on the platform where the elderly woman always stood. The rain was softer here. Or maybe it only sounded softer because the station was so quiet. There was no ticket office, no shop, no warm waiting room. Only 2 platforms, a roof, a few benches, and the old pedestrian bridge above the tracks. Evan looked across to the opposite platform. At first, he saw nothing special. Wet concrete, yellow light, a dark notice board. Then he noticed a small metal plaque fixed to the wall beneath the bridge. A plaque is a small sign, often made of metal or stone, that remembers a person, a place, or an event. This plaque was old. The letters were simple. Evan stepped closer and read it through the rain. It said, "For Daniel and Rose, who met here on the last train, 1978. Below that, in smaller letters, "Some places remember us." Evan read the words twice. Danielle and Rose, a last train, 1978. Some places remember us. He stood under the platform roof, listening to the rain. Then he understood. Not everything, but enough. The elderly woman was Rose, or someone connected to Rose. Marlow Bridge was not just a station. It was a memory, a place where something had begun, a place she came back to, not because she needed to travel, but because the place still held part of her life. That is our second important expression tonight. To come back to a place. To come back means to return. You leave, and later, you return. You come back home. You come back to a city. You come back to a memory. Sometimes, people come back to a place because they miss someone. Sometimes they come back because the place makes them feel close to the past. Marlow Bridge was that kind of place. A small station, a quiet platform, a memory in the rain. Evan did not stay long. He did not want to disturb the place. That may sound strange, but some places feel private even when they are public. A bench in a park, a table in a cafe, a window across the street, a train platform at midnight. He took the next train back toward Alder Station. As the train left Marlow Bridge, he looked through the window. The plaque disappeared into the dark, but the words stayed with him. Some places remember us. On Monday night, Evan worked at the cinema again. The final movie was quiet and slow. Only 6 people came. After closing, he walked to Central Station without running. He arrived early. The last Harbor Line train came in with rain shining on its windows. When Evan entered the carriage, the elderly woman was there. Gray scarf, brown handbag, calm eyes. This time, Evan sat a little closer. Not too close, just close enough to share the silence. The train left the station. The city moved past them. The woman looked out of the window. Evan did not ask questions. He did not mention the plaque. He did not say Daniel or Rose. Instead, when Marlow Bridge was near, he simply looked out too. The station appeared in the rain. Yellow lamps, wet benches, old bridge. The woman stood up. Before the doors opened, she looked at Evan. She seemed to know that he understood something now. Not everything, but enough. She nodded once, a small nod. Then she stepped onto the platform. The doors closed. Evan stayed by the window. The train began to move. The woman stood under the roof, facing the opposite track, but this time she lifted one hand. Not a full wave, just a small movement, almost hidden in the rain. Evan lifted his hand too. Then Marlow Bridge disappeared behind the glass. After that night, Evan never saw the last train in the same way. A train was not just a way to go home, it was a line through the city. A line connecting people, routines, memories, and places. Every passenger carried something invisible. A long day, a missed call, a small hope, a heavy thought, a place they wanted to leave, a place they wanted to reach, or a place they needed to come back to. Evan still worked late at the cinema. He still caught the last train home. He still sat by the window and watched the city pass in the rain. But now, when the train stopped at Marlow Bridge, he looked up. Sometimes the elderly woman was there. Sometimes she was not. When she was there, she stood quietly under the platform roof. When she was not there, the platform still seemed to be waiting. Not sadly, just patiently, like some places do. And that is the end of tonight's story. The last train home was not only about traveling through the city, it was about noticing the quiet stories that travel beside us. It was about a small station in the rain. It was about a woman who came back to a place because the place remembered something beautiful. And it was about Evan, who caught the last train and learned that even ordinary journeys can carry hidden meaning. You are listening to Nightwave English, broadcasting from Lumen District in Havenport. The rain is still falling outside the studio. Now, let us read tonight's listener message. Tonight's message comes from a listener named Sophia. She says she often listens to Nightwave English while riding the train home from work. Her commute is not long, but after a difficult day, the train can feel like a small pause between one part of life and another. At work, she has to speak, answer questions, and stay focused. At home, there are chores, messages, and things to prepare for tomorrow. But on the train, for 20 minutes, she can simply sit by the window and listen. She says the slow English helps her practice without pressure. She does not try to translate every sentence. She just listens for familiar words. Rain, window, station, home. Little by little, she understands more. Thank you, Sophia. That is a beautiful way to practice. A train journey is a perfect time for listening. You do not need to do anything dramatic. You can let the language pass by like lights outside the window. Some words will be clear. Some will disappear too quickly. That is okay. The important thing is to return. Return to listening. Return to the story. Return to English again and again. That is how a language becomes familiar. Not all at once, but through quiet repetition, like a train following the same line through the city. Before we close tonight's broadcast, let us take one more slow ride through Havenport. Imagine you are sitting by the window of the last train home. The carriage is warm. The lights above you are soft. The rain moves across the glass. Outside, the city is dark and shining. You pass apartment buildings with small balconies. Some balconies are full of plants. Some have chairs folded against the wall. Some have lights that glow behind wet glass. At one station, no one gets on. At the next station, one person steps off and opens an umbrella. The train doors close with a soft sound. The train moves again. Inside the carriage, everyone is quiet. A person sleeps with their head against the window. Someone holds a paper bag from a late-night shop. Someone looks at their phone, but not really reading. Someone watches the rain. Maybe you do too. The train passes over a bridge. Below, the harbor water is black and silver. Boats move gently in the dark. A red light blinks far away. The city does not feel busy now. It feels tired, but peaceful. A tired city can still be beautiful. A quiet train can still be full of stories. A small station can still hold a memory. If you're listening tonight from a train, a room, a desk, or a bed, let this broadcast keep you company for a little longer. You do not need to hurry. You do not need to understand everything. Just stay with the sound. Stay with the rain. Stay with the story. Somewhere in Havenport, the last train is still moving through the night. And for now, you are moving with it. Before we say goodnight, let us review a few words and expressions from tonight. To catch the train means to arrive in time and get on the train before it leaves. Evan caught the last train home. To miss the train means to arrive too late. If Evan had arrived 1 minute later, he might have missed the train. Platform is the place where passengers wait for a train. The elderly woman stood on the platform at Marlow Bridge. Carriage is one section of a train where passengers sit. Evan sat in the last carriage. Passenger means a person traveling in a vehicle, like a train, bus, taxi, or plane. The last train had only a few passengers. Shared silence means two people are quiet together in a comfortable way. Evan and the woman shared silence on the train. Plaque is a small sign that remembers a person, place, or event. The plaque at Marlow Bridge remembered Daniel and Rose. To come back to a place means to return to a place. The woman came back to Marlow Bridge because it still meant something to her. And tonight's quiet sentence is, some places remember us. It means that certain places can hold memories. A station, a street, a cafe, a room, a place where something important happened. Keep one phrase with you tonight. The last train home. It sounds simple, but sometimes the last train home is more than a train. It is a moment to breathe, a quiet space between work and sleep, a moving room where stories pass beside each other in the dark. This has been Nightwave English, broadcasting from Lumen District in the quiet coastal city of Havenport. Tonight's episode was The Last Train Home. Thank you for spending part of your night with us. If this story helped you relax, practice your English, or feel a little less alone tonight, you can subscribe to Nightwave English and return for the next broadcast from Havenport. Every episode is made for slow listening, natural learning, and quiet moments after dark. Remember, you do not need to understand everything tonight. Just keep listening. Little by little, English will become clearer. Until next time, stay warm, stay curious. And if you are traveling tonight, I hope you catch the train that takes you home. Good night, listeners. I will meet you again after midnight.